Good morning. Please rise up in body and spirit. We will sing Where Do We Come From? We'll sing it all the way through once, all together. Ready, and...
Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian here in Portland, Oregon. We're an active, multi-generational community where we strive to put love and kindness at the center of all we do together. Our work is to nurture our individual spirits, to support one another wherever we are on our journeys, and to advocate for justice in the wider world. Whether you're brand new here today, I don't know if we have any folks like that, or have been around for a while, whether you're joining us in person or online, we're so glad you're here. It's good to be together. And a special welcome back this morning to Mark Slegers. For some of you newer folks, Mark was our director and then minister of music for 39 years. Woo. And he retired in 2016, so it's good to have you back with us today, Mark. And now let's take a moment to greet our neighbors. Use the chat option if you're online, and if you're here in person, time to say hello. All right, great conversations. I'm going to invite Gregory up now to light our chalice. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Thank you.
Words for our call to worship this morning come from the poet Rilke. Be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given to you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without even noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. It is good that we're together for worship this morning. Welcome.
Stay up there, Reverend. All right. So it is Question Sunday, and so I get to ask Reverend Tom some questions that come from members of our learning community. So, Reverend Tom, we're almost saying goodbye to you after you retire from 31 years of ministry with us, longer than some of us have been alive. Could you tell us one thing that you have done in your ministry that is a source of pride for you, something that makes you really happy to know you offered to us?
There are many things that I'm proud of and feel very privileged to have been here for. One thing I'll talk about is our lay ministry program, which started just a little before I got to the church, but then I've been able to work with many lay ministers through the years, and I think develop a good pastoral care program here at the church and how we care for one another. So I'm proud of that. Another thing I want to mention is the photo on the screen is something that I'm very proud of from over 20 years ago, so probably before some of you were born. There was, if you can imagine a time, there was a time when same-sex couples, two moms or two dads, were not able to legally get married, and it was a great discrimination for those families and a source of great sadness. And then way back in 2004, how many people were around in 2004? Quite a few of us. All of a sudden, one night we got word that Multnomah County, the county that the church is in, was going to grant licenses to same-sex couples. And people lined up at the county building, and they were around the block at like 3 in the morning waiting to get licenses. And a bunch of our members were there. And so I remember standing in line. It was Portland, and it was in March, so it was raining. So people were out in their rain gear. And it was a source of great joy. And so a number of our families here at the church got wedding licenses that day. I see some of the couples out in the audience, Lena and Ann among others. And we came back here to the church, and we opened up the Elliott Chapel, and Lynn Bacon and Ruth Llewellyn-Dix designated themselves as mothers of the brides. They were mostly brides that day. And in that week, that day, I think we had maybe half a dozen weddings. That week, I officiated at 18 weddings in 1 week, and it will always be one of the great sources of pride. So we celebrate that.
You've shared with us that you have some retirement road trip plans. What's one place that you think you might go?
I'm going to go back to my native Wisconsin. I have not been there for a few years. I have family there, and I'm looking forward to that and reconnecting with my Wisconsin roots. And so that's one place I'm really excited to go to.
So raise your hand or wave if you've ever been on a trip somewhere in a car, somewhere that you've been driven to. Okay, can I have just a few ideas? If you've been somewhere really special, do we have any recommendations for Reverend Tom, somewhere that it might be fun to drive to? Yellowstone?
Hot Spring.
Grand Canyon? Glacier? So some kind of Canada, New Orleans? Okay, all right. So this is a picture from South Dakota, from the Badlands National Park. It's somewhere that I've been a few times in my life. I've often crisscrossed the country on road trips going to various ministries and other milestones in my life, and it's one of the more powerfully spiritual places I've been. And so I just suggest to you, if you're ever in the Dakotas, that you swing by and check it out.
Sounds good.
Okay. Would you all like to meet Oscar, an important member of Reverend Tom's family? Okay. Can you tell us a story about Oscar?
Oscar is our dog. He's 4.5 years old, and one of his parents were a combination of Pug and Boston Terrier, and his other parent was an Australian Shepherd. So Oscar is a bit of he's a mutt, and he's a beautiful mutt. He's about 50 pounds, and we love him very much. Oscar's favorite thing in the whole wide world is to go to the park and chase his ball. In fact, that's the main thing that he's interested in. And that's really good, because it's a source of exercise both for Oscar and for his parents. So we love Oscar very much, and he'll be traveling around the country with us, and we'll see how we all do together in a little van.
That your retirement is coming soon, but that also today isn't your last day. So when will we say goodbye to you?
My last sermon will be 2 weeks from today on June the 14th, and that Sunday will include a release of calls. So when a minister comes to a church, and this was many years ago, there was a covenant that we exchanged as minister and congregation, and on the 14th we'll have a ritual releasing one another of that call. And that will be a very special Sunday, and then there'll be a party afterwards with cheesecake, because I am from Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, oh yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So before we head next door, not all of us, sorry, before the learning community heads next door, I'm going to invite you to offer one other round of applause for all of the grown-ups who have taught, advised, and led in our religious education program this year. Many, many people contributed to a wonderful experience for our young people. And if you were one of them and you would be willing to stand or wave, we'd like to give you a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. So today is the last day to register your young person for our bridging ceremony that will be next Sunday. If your young person is starting elementary school, middle school, high school, or bridging into adulthood, you can find the link to register them in the learning community email or the Front Steps email. And everyone, especially our young people, please come next week so that you can cheer on all of the bridgers. I also want to tell you that we have a multi-generational garden club that will start on July 12th. And so people of all ages are invited to come and get their hands dirty and feel the sun on their faces in the Elliott Courtyard next door for our summer all ages RE program. And now the time has come that all members of the learning community are going to go next door and have their ice cream sundae. So let's sing together our hymn of blessing.
This is a pretty active church, and there are a few happenings to share with you this morning. First of all, if you're new or new-ish, you're invited to our welcome circle right after the service. It's held, you can see the sign over there, it's held right over there. And it's a time to learn a little bit more about First Unitarian, ask questions, and maybe meet some other newcomers. So please do join in. We'd love to have a chance to meet you. Next Sunday, June 7th, is our annual flower communion and bridging ceremony. For those of you that might not be familiar, you can read about those in our weekly Front Steps e-news, but the thing to remember is to bring a flower next Sunday, or even a little bouquet of flowers to add to our communal baskets for sharing later in the service. And if you decide to bring roses from your garden, please do snip off any thorns before bringing them. Next Sunday, folks can join our First Steps orientation class after the service for a deeper introduction to First U, find ways to get involved, and take a campus tour. And also next Sunday after the service is our end-of-year social justice celebration. It's a joyful all-church gathering to recognize our social justice ministry, and everyone is welcome to that, whether you're a participant in any of those activities or not. Then on Saturday, June 13th at 2 o'clock, Jennifer Springsteen will be ordained as a Unitarian minister in our Elliott Chapel. This is a significant milestone for anybody pursuing ministry in our faith, and we're very excited for Jennifer. That's open to everybody, and there's more info in our weekly e-news. And lastly, certainly not least, and it was already mentioned, 2 weeks from today, June 14th, will be Reverend Tom's final service here in our pulpit with a celebration to honor him afterwards. So I know we'll want to be here for that. So stuff going on. Be sure to check out our Front Steps e-news each week for details and to see what's coming up. so wonderful, choir. Thank you. It's our practice each week to share our offering with an organization that is aligned with our values. And during May, we're sharing our plate with 350 PDX, which is a grassroots climate justice group. Their work focuses on climate policy, forest protection, and resisting fossil fuels, focusing on those who are most affected by climate change. Our Community for Earth has partnered with 350 PDX for over a decade now. In just a moment, our ushers will be around to receive donations by cash or check. To give electronically, you can use the Boxcast donate button or the QR codes that will appear momentarily on the screen, or green cards in a seat back near you. It's our generosity that makes this ministry possible. Thank you. We take time each week in our service to name the milestones and joys and concerns of our community. If you have a prayer request for our ministers and lay ministers to hold, or a milestone you'd like mentioned in a Sunday service, you can go to our website and search for pastoral care. You can also use that tiny URL shown at the bottom of our screens. Then just fill out the form, and that will automatically go to our ministers and lay ministers. And if you're here in person, you can light a candle in either one of our galleries, write down your intention, and place it in the prayer urn to be collected and held by our lay ministers. Several things to mention today. A memorial service will be held for member Emily Daniel next Saturday, June 6th, at 1 o'clock in our Elliott Chapel. Emily died on October 4th at the age of 73. Some of you, that have been around for a while will remember Nancy Olson, who served on our church staff for many years as membership director and as a adult program director, and for a brief period of time as our church administrator from the mid-1990s to 2005. This morning, Nancy was ordained as a minister by All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church of Indianapolis, where she currently serves as religious education director. Reverend Tom offered a virtual invocation for the service, and our own Lynn Bacon offered a story for all ages. So blessings and congratulations, Nancy. That is just great news. Yeah. Becca Marisman, Ryan Johnston, and big sibling Elio share the joy that baby Ezra joined their family Earthside after being born on April 12th. All are well and settling into life together, and they hope to be back at church soon. And one especially wonderful joy to share today, Julie Grice, who has had Julie has had a lot of medical and personal challenges during this past year and is obviously in church with us today in her brand new motorized wheelchair to make life easier. Welcome back, Julie. It is so good to see you again. We're just thrilled. Will you pray with me? Spirit of all of us, we walked in these doors this morning carrying the memory of everything that this week has handed us, what we've held on to by choice or by necessity, what we've already let go of, whether we wanted to or not. And with all of what's still in our hands, we came here. But why? Maybe if we're new, we came out of curiosity or just looking for a little downtime. Maybe for some beautiful music to hear and to sing, to connect with our friends or to make new ones, to hear words that comfort us, yes, but that also strengthen and challenge us, because we carry deep concerns for all that is happening beyond these walls, for the choices being made in our communities and in our country and in the world, and for the harm those choices can cause, are causing. So maybe being here helps us return to the world with steadier hearts. Maybe it sends us out again with renewed courage for the work of love and justice. And when our time together ends today, may we carry out the door what we came in for, and then some. Amen. Let's be together now for a few moments of quiet reflection. Now please rise in body and in spirit and join in our doxology, Spirit of Life. Our reading today is by Unitarian Universalist minister Nancy Schaefer, entitled That Which Holds All. Because she wanted everyone to feel included in her prayer, she said right at the beginning several names for the holy. Spirit, she said, Holy One, Mystery, God. But then, thinking these weren't enough ways of addressing that which cannot be fully addressed, she added particularities, saying, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Ancient Holy One, mystery we will not ever fully know, gracious God, and also, Spirit of this earth, God of Sarah, Gaia, thou. And then, tongue loosened, she fell to naming superlatives as well. Most creative one, greatest source, closest hope. Even though superlatives for the sacred seemed to her probably redundant, but then she couldn't stop. One who made the stars, she said, although she knew technically a number of those present didn't believe that stars had been made by any one or thing, but just luckily happened. One who is an entire ocean of compassion, she said, and no one laughed. That which has been present since before the beginning, she said, and the room was silent. Then, although she hadn't imagined it this way, others began to offer names. Peace, said one. One my mother knew, said another. Ancestor, said a third. Wind, rain, breath, said someone near the back. Refuge, that which holds all. A child said water. Someone said Kuan Yin. Then womb, witness, great kindness, great eagle, eternal stillness. And then there wasn't any need to say the things she'd thought would be important to say. And everyone sat hushed until someone said, Amen.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, choir. So good to have you back, Mark. Show us how to love. I think that's what church is about. So for those of you who are new, this is not quite a typical service in that every so often we have what we call a question and answer sermon. People send in questions and the minister tries to answer those questions from the pulpit. And since I'm going to be retiring soon, this felt like a good thing to do a couple of weeks before I have my final service here. So thanks to Julia Spence, who sorted the questions. I got these last night, so I've had a little bit of time to think about them, but just a few hours. So I'm going to say the questions and speak, and we've got a little while to do that. So here we go. In the future, when those of us who know you at our church speak of you, how would you hope the following sentence would be finished? When I think of Tom, I will always remember ... I think that my role in this congregation has essentially been that of pastor. It's been a great privilege. I have, I hope, provided some continuity between senior ministers. 31 years, I've had the privilege of serving with 3 wonderful senior ministers, and that continuity I hope I've been able to provide through times of transition. I hope they say that I was here with you and that I did my best to show up. That's essentially, I think, what ministry is. I'm proud of many things here. As mentioned earlier, our lay ministry program has evolved through my time. I've served with many wonderful lay ministers. The building projects, this church block has evolved a lot in the last 31 years. Many rites of passage. I've been privileged to officiate at many memorial services. You know, I started doing memorials. The agreement with Marilyn Sewell, the first senior minister I served with, was the minister who preached on Sunday usually would not do the Saturday memorials. So that's how because I was not preaching as much, I was the one that tended to take on memorials, and over time those kind of became an important part of what I do here, and that has been a tremendous privilege to officiate at many rites of passage and many weddings as well, and a few other ceremonies through the years. So it's been a great privilege. At the end of your tenure at First Unitarian and looking back on 31 years, is there a cautionary statement you would provide to the congregation on the order of, if I knew then what I know now, I would avoid, or I would do ... differently? Could speak for a good hour on that one, I think. Ministry is not an easy profession. In church life and in ministry, you see people at their best, sometimes at their worst, but mostly at their best. Ministers can be giant projection screens. People see the best, often the best, but sometimes the worst in their ministers, and that's not a role that ministers choose, but it's often a role we find ourselves in, and that gets tiring sometimes. Lessons that I've learned. When it comes to conflict, probably getting outside help sooner is better than trying to handle it on your own. But often we think we can, and so that's one thing that I think looking back I would do differently. Would probably be more willing to set boundaries with folks who are, for whatever reason, challenging the body of the congregation, the community. There's a paradox, I think, at the heart of our liberal faith, what sometimes can be called, what I call the tyranny of the individual. It's our first principle, and it's our guiding principle of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And mostly that's a beautiful thing to celebrate, but every so often those individuals can really disrupt the body of the congregation. And so that's a tension, and a good tension in our liberal faith. And sometimes that means boundaries need to be set with folks, and that can be a difficult thing. So that's one thing that comes to mind. And probably also just a statement about learning to trust the knowledge, the wisdom that's in the body. I think that what I've learned, ministers, of course, have answers, but mostly ministers and congregations grow together and work things out together, and that's an important thing. It's a certain humility that I know lots, but I don't know everything, and to just be mindful of that, a kind of a trusting that we will figure it out together. Who have been your teachers? Who has modeled for you a deep commitment to service, the courage to be vulnerable, humility, unconditional love? Wow, there's a lot of people on that list for me. My mother, of course, comes to mind. The Jesuits come to mind. I probably would not be in this pulpit were it not for being educated by the Jesuits, in a Catholic order of priests, and I was privileged to go to a Catholic university, and I was raised a Lutheran. But what the Catholics did, what the Jesuits did particularly, the Jesuits are known as teachers, particularly, and justice advocates. The Jesuits taught me to think for myself, and in the Jesuit system, usually that's thinking for yourself within the tradition of Catholicism. But because I had not been raised in that tradition, I think that may well have been eventually what led me to Unitarian Universalism. It was that the encouragement to think for myself and reason for myself, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Many people are on the list, seminary professors, Rebecca Parker, Ron Cook. They said they saw potential in me that I didn't always see in myself, so I'm grateful for them. And then, of course, many, many teachers here at the church. People I've served with on staff. Nancy Olson was mentioned. It's such a blessing that Nancy's being ordained today. Other colleagues on staff, and lots of congregants. I cannot begin to list all the congregants and all that congregants have taught me. Just the list is innumerable. One other person I want to mention is my spiritual director for the last 25 years is a Catholic priest named Jim Galuzzo. And Jim has helped me understand my role here at the church from the outside perspective of somebody not in the church, and I'm eternally grateful to Jim for all these years of being together. So thank you all who have been my teachers through these many, many years. What is the hardest thing you have ever had to do? I had to think about this one. Personally, I lost my father when I was 7 years old, and that was a very traumatic event for me. It was certainly a defining event in my life, and needing to figure out who was I in this context, and sometimes people trying to be helpful were not always helpful in that, so it's taken me years to sort of get some perspective on that. Here at the church, a number of things come to mind. Memorial services are mostly a great privilege, officiating at memorial services. And especially memorial services that I would say are in the order of things. Someone lives a good, long life, and then we celebrate that life. It's not so easy when I've had a couple instances of memorials for teenagers, and that has been just being present has been very, very a great privilege, but also very painful. I'm thinking of a couple who lost twins in utero at like 5 months, and doing a memorial service for those little ones. Those are the most difficult. It's a great privilege, but I think those are the times when the church can really be there for people. The other difficult things have been, of course, times of conflict. churches are very human institutions, and inevitably there are conflicts in churches, and those are difficult. And being a minister in the midst of conflict, trying to hold the church system has conflicts play out, and how to work our way through them, and that's never easy. And so those are some of the most difficult things that have been here for me in this time. A little lighter question. Who are your favorite poets? When did your love of poetry begin, and how? So I took a class in seminary. And one of the tasks of that class was to memorize a poem every week. And if you're looking for a spiritual practice, I recommend this. This is it keeps your mind sharp, and I've not necessarily kept up with this through the years, but that's where I started really paying more attention to poets. I have many favorites. Of course, Mary Oliver, I have to say, if those of you who've been around for a while, I call her Saint Mary Oliver, and she's a favorite for many Unitarian Universalist folks. David White, Nancy Schaefer, who Catherine read her wonderful poem earlier. Nancy was actually a congregant in my intern congregation in Davis, California, back in the early 90s. And sadly, she died of a brain tumor in, I think, 2010. But her legacy of poetry lives on, so I remember her. Ross Gay is a newer poet for me. His work is wonderful. I really have enjoyed it. And of course, classics like Walt Whitman, among others, come to mind. Poetry is an important part of my spiritual practice of just pulling off a poetry book. My partner and I are in the midst of downsizing and selling our house, and that means downsizing the book collection, which is quite a task. But what I notice is that the books that I'm most wanting to keep are my books of poetry, and when I imagine myself in my recliner in retirement, I imagine myself just pulling off a book of poetry and reading that. What are you most excited about in retirement? Well, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about turning a new chapter. I've been here at the church for 31 years, and I can't quite imagine not being at the church. That is going to be an adjustment, waking up in the morning and thinking about the church. And that's been a great privilege, and I can't quite get my head around what it's going to be like to not have that. So that's going to be a big adjustment. But what's exciting is starting a new chapter, something out of the ordinary. Some of you may know that my partner and I have bought a Volkswagen Vanagon 1985, and this is a whole subculture in the world that I've become acquainted with in the last few months. The Vanagon people, part of the Vanagon culture is that you buy a Vanagon and then you put a Subaru motor in it and you do all these things to it, and then you travel around the country and you connect with other people in Vanagons, and it's a whole subculture. So I look forward to that. It's out of my comfort zone, and I think that's the concept, that's the idea of retirement, is doing something that's a little out of your comfort zone. So it's looking forward to that and relaxing into that. I'm a person who likes to have things in pretty good order and to be in control, and this will be a chapter where that will be tested. So we will see. How long were you in Indonesia, and what did you take away from Bali? And now for something completely different. In 2003, I had the privilege of going on sabbatical, and I had the privilege of being in Southeast Asia for 3 months. And I traveled to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand, and then I spent 6 weeks in Bali, which is an island in Indonesia. First of all, it should be a basic human right that everybody spends 6 weeks in Bali. The world would be, I think, a much better place if that were the case. I lived in a little cottage in a rice paddy outside of Ubud, which is sort of the cultural center of Bali. And the longer I was there, the more time I spent in one particular chair. There was a balcony on this house, and I spent time in this chair. And the longer I was there, the more time I spent in that chair, just looking out at the rice paddy and just watching the life of the community go by. And in Bali, everyone sees themselves as an artist. One of the things that when children grow up, what is your expression of art? How is it that you're an artist? And it's a completely different way of being for an American. Of like, what is the next thing to accomplish? What is that? In Bali, it's how are we together? And so that was a profound experience for me. And just learning to sort of relax into that and see the world through not what how much money you're making or other things of status that we put so much attention on, but how are you in the world? And so that's one of the gifts I took away from Bali. My friends say that when I came back from there, I was more relaxed than they've ever seen me, and that was probably true. What are you most excited to see, experience on your trip? Spoke to this a little bit earlier. There are certainly places that I want to go, but mostly it's being in a different mode. I'm used to, when setting out on a road trip, to say, what's the destination and how much territory are we covering today? Mostly on freeways, and what will be different? I'm looking to being on more two-lane roads and not necessarily have a destination. There'll be a destination every day. I talked to some wonderful folks in the congregation who traveled around the country, and they developed a routine of every day they drove for a few hours, and then they stopped every day at 3 o'clock and got out their easy chairs and had a beer at 3 o'clock. I'm looking forward to that routine. I'm looking forward and a little nervous about being in different parts of the country. 2 gay men in a Vanagon with Oregon plates makes me a little nervous, to be honest, a little out of my comfort zone. I'm blessed with a partner who's very social, more than I am, and I'm trusting he'll help with that. But it's exciting to see different parts of the country. I'm also looking forward to, I grew up in Wisconsin, and I've not been back there for several years, really since just before the pandemic, actually. So I'm excited to see friends back in the upper Midwest and in different parts of the country, and to travel to some places that I haven't necessarily traveled to before. I love food and experiencing food in different parts of the country. So I'm excited about many things and a little bit nervous, but again, that comes back to that theme of growth experiences. So, what have you seen or experienced that was so beautiful that you had to stop and catch your breath? Another big question. Recently, I had the experience of actually being out and seeing stars. You know, in Portland, in the city, it's hard to see the sky and stars. And so I happened to be out and see the constellation of stars, and it took my breath away. I think we've all had those experiences. I've had that at the ocean. I've had that watching sunrise. I've had that with the experience of autumn leaves. I'm an autumn person, and especially the autumn is a time when I see that. I also think of bearing witness in my role as minister, bearing witness to seeing people's resilience and their strength, and seeing things come out of people that are totally unexpected and surprising, and That's a tremendous sense of privilege of just bearing witness to that. That's one of the things that gives me faith in a troubled world, is just seeing many of you and seeing your stories and how you manage your way through the world, sometimes under very difficult circumstances, and that can be really kind of awe-inspiring to witness that. What surprised you about being our minister? Another big question. In seminary you learn about all kinds of things, but I think it's actually in being in the church that this one is something that you learn about. Ministry, first of all, is a tremendous privilege. It's a tremendous privilege to be in people's lives and to bear witness to their lives. I'm amazed at how much trust people put in their ministers and how very seriously I've learned to take that. You are dealing with people's souls and you very much, and that's a sacred responsibility. In churches, we do see people at their best, mostly, sometimes at their worst. I think the other thing in this congregation is the sense of history that one steps into. This congregation's been around for over 160 years. We talk often about our tradition here, but it's humbling to know that you're part of that tradition. When I came to the church in the early 90s, I heard a lot of stories about Dr. Steiner. Now, I know some of you out there, I'm looking at Ruth, some of you, Dr. Steiner was the minister here for 30 years, from 1935 to the mid-60s. And it's humbling hearing stories about former ministers and lay leaders who have been exemplars in the congregation. But you're aware of, someday people will tell stories about me, and then someday people will say, Tom who? And that's a little humbling. I'm aware that today, May 31st, 17 years ago was Marilyn Sewell's last sermon in this pulpit, 17 years ago today. So she served for 17 years and now has been retired for 17 years. And so I'm just very aware of that continuity and how ministers do come and ministers go, and that's part of the tradition that I've been privileged to be a part of. The marriage metaphor for ministers and congregations is a little tricky, the marriage metaphor, and yet I think at their best, ministers and congregations journey together and grow together. They can call out the best, sometimes the worst in each other, but I think that is what can be a kind of a mutual growth and a mutual serving together, and all boats rising, if you will. So that's been a great privilege. And I guess the depth of privilege maybe is what has been a bit of a surprise. How are we doing? We're doing okay. A couple more questions. You have provided such steadiness and support over these years. We have experienced a variety of challenging events and situations. Could you talk about these challenges or any others, and what went well and or what you wish you might have done differently? A number of examples are given. Through the times of conflict, those have been some of the most difficult. There was a conflict involving our recent music director. There's been conflicts between ministry and board, among congregants, among groups of congregants. And navigating way through those conflicts have been very difficult and very painful for the whole congregation. As I mentioned earlier, I think maybe trying to get help earlier, but also trying to step back and put things in perspective. In the heat of any given conflict, it's hard sometimes to see perspective, and what is it that's for the good of the whole, for the good of the congregation, because ultimately that's what we're serving. One of the paradoxes of ministry is that you're here for a time as minister, and you're in the heart of the congregation, but then when you leave, the congregation is the continuity. The congregation is what continues on. And it's, I think, a deep awareness of that and needing to always be mindful of that. The questioner mentioned COVID. COVID was a time I think we're all still, I'm humbled by the impacts that I continue to see from that time. This congregation, I think, was privileged in that we had set up an online viewing and online worship experience, thanks to the good work of Jason Chaplin and a number of folks. And so we went into COVID stronger than a lot of congregations. My colleagues who were in congregations that didn't have that, those first months of COVID they had to figure out worship on Zoom, and a lot of ministers are not that tech savvy, and it was a very trying time in the life of congregations. And it was a time when I think we had to just kind of figure it out because there wasn't some easy model to see. I think we managed to do that somewhat well. I think the biggest impact was in our learning community and our program for children and youth. That didn't translate to online necessarily easily, so we had to try to figure out. But the church will forever be different, and we're in a time of a church that is evolving, and I think that is the church in the next couple of years will be going through a strategic planning process. Reverend Allison and the board are beginning that process, and it's figuring out what is this congregation, who's in this community. Looking forward, we're in a downtown that is not like it was a few years ago. We're very aware of our houseless neighbors. We're very aware of the challenges of the urban core. And what will the church be in this period? What is its mission in this period going forward? Those are some big questions. We're privileged to own this city block, which is a blessing. And there's going to be some big questions with what does the church need in a facility, and what can the church afford in a facility? So those are going to be some big questions before all of you in the years to come. And like generations have before, those answers will come, and yet they won't necessarily be easy. I think that I look forward to watching from a distance and what evolves. I won't entirely miss the process, but I will sure be praying and holding with you through that time. Let's see, how did I do? I think that's mostly what I want to say about that. Your retirement will be another ministerial transition for the church. Any thoughts you care to share with the congregation about how we might grieve your loss and prepare to move on? Well, I think this time that we're in is a time to celebrate this time we've had together and my ministry here. You all have been very kind in your words of thanks and blessing, and I'm grateful for that. And so I hope these next couple weeks will continue that. You are in good hands. Reverend Allison is a wonderful minister, and I hope you know how blessed you are to have her. Don't take her for granted. That's my admonition to you. Be open to the gifts people bring and changes. I know I've been blessed to bring gifts here, but there will be ministers to come who will bring many new and different and similar blessings. And so, and in this time of transition, be gentle and kind to everyone around. Dear Catherine Esty is also retiring, you may know, after 16 years. So between Catherine and I, there's a bit of institutional knowledge that is departing in a month. And so be kind to one another, be kind to your ministers and staff, be kind to your lay leaders, because there will be bumps in the road. Inevitably, there will be. but hang together, be kind, and be patient, and it will work out. I came to the church 31 years ago in the midst of all the growth that happened in the early 90s, a time of great blessing and a time of great challenge. The church grew by some 40% in 1 year when Marilyn Sewell arrived with all of the anti-gay ballot measures that were happening. And the church was in a time it was an exciting time. There's something that I keep kicking down here. It was a very exciting time, but it was also a challenging time because the old-timers felt like they had lost their church in that period. The church that was, most people knew most other people, and so it was a difficult time. Suddenly there were all these new people, and that felt, I think for the folks who had been around for a while, it was a sense of, we've lost something here. And it took a while to kind of figure that out. You may know that for some 7-8 years, we had 3 services next door in the Elliott Chapel, which was a wonderful, every week, people having to squeeze together. It was a challenging time and a blessed time in the church. So churches go through different chapters, and I think that it's important to remember that the status quo, as comfortable as it is inevitably it's going to change. Okay, one last question. I see I'm almost out of time. When you are tired, discouraged, have exhausted your resources, how do you fill your body, mind, and spirit? Currently, my practice is to sit on my front porch every morning for an hour with my partner and dog and have coffee. And I don't say that flippantly. I used to get up and start working every morning, and now I take an hour to have coffee and sit on the front porch and watch people go by. I try to work on a spiritual practice. For me, that is often pulling a poetry book down and just taking some time with it. I think we're going to end it there. What will I miss most? I'll miss all of you terribly. And I'm inspired every week by you and what I see, and it's been a great privilege. And so I'm going to end on that note, and I think we're going to have a closing hymn. Thanks, everybody. All right, Mark, take us out. Here we go. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know it is. Get there, heaven knows how we will get there. We will do. remember every day to be grateful for all the many blessings in your life. As you have been blessed, may you continue to be a blessing. This is the day that you and I have been given, so let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.